prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're blessed to have our former Vice Mayor and our own Chaplain Long. Thank you.
You may stand if you're comfortably able or remain seated. Some days our world is going just the way we want it to go, and we give thanks for such sweet days. But some days we are caught up in the trials and tribulations of our everyday lives. Some days the world seems to swirl around us. Some days it's like a whirlpool pulling us downward. Some days troubling news seems to blast us from every direction. Those are the days we cry out. We need your healing touch right now, dear God, and we give thanks for the sweet days. But on the hard days, we ask you to help us to believe in your healing love and help us to focus our lives on your redeeming presence. Enable us to reach out to each other and to our community, building each other up, celebrating our sweet days, helping each other carry the burdens of this life on hard days. Give us the strength, determination, and commitment to speak your word of peace to one another and to our neighbors, dear God, as we seek your presence in our lives and as we strive to transform life for the welfare of all. Holy God, we give thanks for the mercy you show us and the freedom you offer us. Help us and our city, county, state, and national leaders use these gifts so freely and fully given that we might be your agents of freedom and mercy in our homes and in our communities. In your holy name, I offer this, our invocation, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen and amen.
Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. This is the part where we have any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda. I'm going to ask that the proclamations that we're going to be giving out, the Red Ribbon Week, the Florida Climate Week, Mount Olive Canyon Church Anniversary, and the proclamations from Darby G. Brown, we move that up to the first, make that instead of 6, make it 5, and then the business meeting will then proceed as indicated. Do you have any objections? None have? Okay. First proclamation. Reading will be the Red Ribbon Week. Whereas the communities across America have been plagued by the numerous problems associated with illicit drug use and those that traffic in them. And whereas there is hope in winning the war on drugs, and that hope lies in the education and drug demand reduction, coupled with the hard work and determination of organizations such as Young Marines of the United States Marine Corps, and their to foster a healthy, drug-free lifestyle. And whereas government and community leaders know that citizen support is one of the most effective tools in the effort to reduce the use of illicit drugs in our community, and whereas the Red Ribbon has been chosen as a symbol of commemorating the work of Enrique Kiki Camarena, a drug enforcement administration agent who was murdered in the line of duty and represents the belief that one person can make a difference. And whereas the Red Ribbon Campaign was established by Congress in 1988 to encourage a drug-free lifestyle and involvement in drug prevention and reduction efforts. And whereas on October 23rd to the 31st of October, it has been designated National Red Ribbon Week, which encourages Americans to wear a red ribbon to show their support for a drug-free environment. Now, therefore, I, Vernon J. Burton, Mayor of the City of Lake Helen, do hereby proclaim October 23rd through October 31st as Red Ribbon Week in the City of Lake Helen, and urge all citizens to join me in this special observance. Give him applause. Anytime we have a worthy card that is reaching out, then we should support them. The next one I'm going to read is the proclamation for the Florida Climate Week. The City of Lake Helen, Volusia County, Florida Climate Week. Whereas the Florida Climate Week is a movement toward a greener, cleaner future, and whereas the People's Climate Pledge empowers individuals throughout the state of Florida to take meaningful actions for the state, and whereas the City of Lake Helen Earth Day observance is a culmination of efforts by many citizens, community organizations, government agencies to share in the recognition of this historic day. And whereas the City of Lake Helen declares that it is time to commit to protecting and preserving environments for generations to come. And whereas by committing to the People's Climate Pledge, citizens of Lake Helen are not just making a promise, they are joining a community dedicated to making a real difference. And whereas we are committed to reducing the carbon footprint, learning about the impacts of climate change on our state, and protecting the precious natural resources and habitats of the state of Florida. And now, therefore, as it be resolved that the City of Lake Helen City Commission do hereby proclaim October 7th to October 13th, 2024 as the Florida Climate Week. Will be signed by Mayor Vernon Burton, Commissioner Heather Rutledge, Commissioner Vice Mayor Roger Eckert, Commissioner Lynn Donata, and Commissioner Charlene Bishop. The next proclamation we're going to read, and I'm going to make two presentations. We're going to read the second one first. One of our citizens, who's been a lifetime Lake Helen resident and a member of the church, the Mount Olive AME Church, African Methodist Episcopal Church, as Dorothy Jean Brown Jones. Most people know her as Dot Jones. And Dot Jones was the epitome of a person who was dedicated to service, her community, and her church. So this proclamation is in recognition of that. When we got the news that she had passed, they had already had a service and it was just a memorial. So we're going to give this to the pastor of the church who is back there and her husband, and I'll give them the opportunity to speak. I'll read, therefore. Whereas one of the pleasures of the City Commission is to recognize and honor the life of outstanding citizens in our city. And whereas today it is our pleasure to join with our many friends, wonderful family, and the entire community of Lake Helen in honoring the life of Dorothy Jean Brown Jones. Whereas Dorothy Jones, 72, passed away on Monday, August the 12th, 2024, in DeLand, Florida. She was a resident of the City of Lake Helen until her passing. And whereas Dorothy Jones was born March 2nd, 1919 in Miami, Florida, to the late William Robert Brown Sr. and Frankie Mae Sanders Ross. She was raised between Lake Helen and Miami, Florida. She married Alton Jones Sr. in her teenage years and welcomed her first son, Alton Jones Jr., Al, into the world. She later also welcomed a second son, Maurice Jones, and a third son, Cedric Jones. He is now deceased, to that family nest. And whereas Dot Jones always played the role of caretaker and a community worker, she worked as a Volusia County school bus driver until she retired. After her pastime included dancing and selling Avon, she lived a productive life, caring for others when she could, traveling to spend time with her family members, and traveling north to see family and play in the snow with her kids. Dorothy Jones was preceded in death by her parents, grandparents, and son, Cedric Jones. She leaves to cherish her memory, her loving husband, Alton Jones Sr., and Alton Jones Jr., Morris Jones, Sean of Lake Helen, as well as 10 grandchildren, 17 great-grandchildren, and a host of nieces, nephews, and cousins and friends. Whereas her love of Lake Helen will always be remembered and cherished, now therefore the City Commission of the City of Lake Helen hereby express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to Mrs. Dorothy Jones. In testimony thereof, the mayor of the City of Lake Helen have hereunto set our hands and caused it to be fixed the great seal of the City of Lake Helen in the state of Florida this day, 12th day of September 2024. Pastor, please come on forward. This is Pastor Cheryl Myrick. She is the pastor of the Mount Olive Andy Church. That church sits in front of my house, and every Sunday morning before 7 o'clock, I see her pulling into the driveway, and she's coming to bring the word. So for that, I have two things. I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas the privileges, the thing about the church, it is the oldest African-American church in the city of Lake Helen. Whereas one of the privileges of the City of Lake Helen Commission is to recognize and to honor outstanding organizations within our city. And whereas Mount Olive African Methodist Episcopal Church celebrates its 131st anniversary. And whereas this historic church was organized in 1894 with Reverend Samuels as pastor. And whereas the church has the distinction of being the first church organized in the African American community of the city of Lake Helen. And whereas the first sanctuary was constructed in 1918. And whereas the pioneer families and founders of the Mount Olive AME Church left a proud legacy for their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and generations to follow. And whereas Mount Olive AME Church salutes the families of this 131-year-old church, celebrating its presence as it aspires to increase spirituality, sharpen its vision, renew its faith, and endeavors to do even greater things in the future. And whereas the City Commission of the City of Lake Helen and the entire community celebrates the founding and the current members of their memories of accomplishments in the future. And therefore, the City Commission of the City of Lake Helen hereby express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to Mount Olive African Methodist Episcopal Church as it celebrates its future in Lake Helen. And in testimony thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the great seal of the City of Lake Helen and the state of Florida this 21st day of July when it was first given. And that wasn't enough. On the anniversary, I went to the anniversary and I had this made up. What it is a picture of the church and an article that I wrote, which I won't read it now. I wrote this article in November of of 2013. Now, as you remember, the church was founded in
94?
1884?
Oh, I thought you said 90.
No, 1884. I'm just checking her. But the building didn't get built until 1917. Yeah. No,
Now you're checking you.
Yeah. It was actually built, and the building was built in 1918. Now, we all hear us talking about, hear me anyway, talking about Albert Suber. Albert Suber, who was the first postman of the city of Lake Helen, and he delivered mail in the city of Lake Helen before Lake Helen was a city. It was made a city in 1888. He was beginning to deliver the mail in 1883. Uncle Suber was the former pastor of this church. He died 1 year before the construction of this building. And so this is a testimony to him and the church. And there again, Sister Reverend Pastor. Okay, we're in front of this thing here.
Yeah.
Come right here. Yes. Yeah, I got it. You get one hand. We got it. One. Okay, thank you. As one of 3 pastors, female pastors in the city of Lake Helen, I met the new pastor of the Methodist Church, and that's Miss Sue Holland. She would have liked to have been here today, but she had a sister that come from out of town, but she will be in next month's meeting. Pastor, would you like to have a few words? Few words, you're pastor.
I'm a pastor, if you want to say it, preaching. To God be the glory. I'm just glad to be here this evening. I love the mayor. I love it. When I first got here 6 years ago, I looked at him and said, "You my mayor." I think he was city commissioner then. And he said, "You keep speaking that." I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna keep speaking." So when it came to pass, he said, "You told me." I said, "I kept telling you."
Amen.
To God be the glory. But we're happy to be in Lake Helena for 131 years. There's been a few female pastors, but I am proud to be the pastor of Mount Olive African Methodist Episcopal Church. As we said, we're the little white church that sits side the road at 683 West Ohio Avenue. And we invite you to come and see what's going on down there. There's a lot going on, and we love Lake Helena. Amen. And thank you. And I am finished.
Yeah, she already had it. Yeah, I was just, I already presented you the proclamation, just for the, I handed it to you when we had the, yes, they said the church. And, okay, so, the reason that you can leave, I know you, most of our pastors, unfortunately, do not live in Lake Helen, so we try to keep them when they can. And I've been successful in the last couple of meetings to get them to come on the telephone and open up our meetings. So having Pastor here, she lives a little far south, so we thank her. And that's her husband, Brother Meyer.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. He was pastor tonight.
Good to be here.
Good to see you.
Good to see such lovely faces. Come together under one roof. Bring your minds together.
Amen. So let's just see.
You all be blessed.
Amen. Okay, let's get back to the business at hand. Yeah, now we're at 6, which is the public hearing. Yeah. Administrator, you want to give us some opening words?
I'm going to read my title first.
Sure.
Resolution number 2024-07 by title only for first reading. Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Lake County, providing for effective date. And I'm just going to read paragraph 1, because we've got to publicly announce this, is that the FY 2024-2025 operating millage rate of 7.25 mils, which is greater than the rollback rate of 5.9456 mils by 21.94%.
Okay, now this is a script that we have here. Has to be read unofficially, so the all words will be in it, so we don't do anything amiss. This is the first public hearing of the City Commission fiscal year 2024-2025 property tax rate, budget, and bond fees. The taxing authority is the City of Lake Helen. The rollback rate is 5.9456 mils. The percentage of the change of the over the rollback rate is 21.94%. The millage rate will be levied at 7.25 mils. The public hearing on the millage rate is open, and it will recognize anyone who wishes to speak. If you have a card, this would be for 5A. Okay, I only have one. Pass this up, Pastor. Principal Shore, she's here for one thing. Braxton.
He's not here for this, he's here for the assessment.
Okay. Todd Preston is not here for the millage. I have Ron Herrick, and he is here for 5C. So the hearing is, we recognize anyone who would like to speak. Hearing none. And now the public hearing is now closed. City Commission, City Administrator, City Attorney will read the resolution, as we've already done, and we'll ask for a motion. There will be asked for a motion for the resolution to adopt tentative millage, and commissioners may make a second every motion. Is there any?
I make a motion, we adopt resolution 2024-07.
Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? One opposed? Two in favor, one opposed. Commissioner Bernard?
Four.
Four opposed, did I say that?
No, 4 in favor.
Four in favor, one opposed. Okay. Now we open up the opportunity for commission discussions, and we may have discussion. We already voted?
We had discussion.
We did have that. Okay, it's real right there. Okay, we're moving right along. Now we have the next one is the annual budget.
Okay, I'm going to read that by.
Yeah, that's right.
Resolution number 2024-08 by title only for first reading. Resolution of City Commission of the City of Lake Helen, Volusia County, Florida, adopting a tentative budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025, providing an effective.
It's now open for citizens that would like to speak. That's 5B. No one here for 5B? It's closed. City Attorney read the resolution already. Ask for a motion.
Make a motion, we adopt resolution 2024-08.
Motion made by Vice Mayor. Dr. Eckert in the second. Heather, second. All in favor?
Aye. All discussion.
Oh, thank you for that. Any discussion? No discussion? Okay. Motion. Second. All right, the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 2 opposed, 3 motions in favor, motion passed. Commissioner Bishop, Commissioner Nada, opposed. Moving on down to the public hearing for fines and fees is open. Recognize 5C, what is 5C? I'm missing 5C. It's on the next page. 5C is the final resolution for 5C. This is the second reading. Ron Perry, you're ready to speak.
Resolution number 2024-01, by title only for second and final reading. A resolution of Lake County Court relating to provision of fire rescue, stormwater, and solid waste services in the city. Proposing fire rescue, stormwater, and solid waste set property located within the city. Establishing the respective assessment rates for the fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2024. Approving the non-ad valorem assessment roll for such fiscal year and directing delivery thereof to the tax collector, providing for severability and providing an effective date.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we adopt resolution number 2024-01.
Second.
Motion moved and second. Vote.
Discussion.
Discussion is closed. Mr. Ron Perry.
Ron Perry, 451 West Michigan. This, the non-ad valorem taxes, I don't know if we have reached, are we the highest millage rate now in Volusia County? But by raising the millage rate, we're not looking at the people that don't pay taxes. So you get this non-ad valorem tax. Why are we not spreading this non-ad valorem tax to everybody, every household in the system, instead of raising the millage rate for just the people that pay the taxes? You know, and we misappropriate funds too often. The budget, I see that 2 people didn't even agree to the budget. And you're paying $60,000 for a guy that approves a house being built when we have our own committee that can approve that. So there's money that we're wasting, and I'm on a fixed income now. I'm retired, and you kind of keep on raising the bar for non-essential stuff. And if you want to do that, make a non-ad valorem tax for this miscellaneous, and then everybody in the city that has a house is going to pay that non-ad valorem tax instead of just the people that pay taxes. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming up. Now we have the vote.
No, you got more public comments?
Oh, more comments? I've only got one.
Have you read it before? No.
It doesn't have a, is that for Braxton?
Braxton and also
Daniel Sure. Oh, she didn't have her number down, I'm sorry. You speak first.
I'm Danielle Sure, the principal of Ivy Han at 565 South Lakeview Drive. I do my time, Mr. Rector.
He has a card as well, so you can have both.
Yes. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commission members. My name is Braxton Padgett. I'm an attorney. I'm here on behalf of Ivy Han Charter School. What we wanted to discuss today is the stormwater assessment. It's kind of been a discussion now, I think, ongoing for really several years about whether or not Ivy Han is subject to the stormwater assessment. And I guess to cut to the chase, Ivy Han is of the opinion that under the law, they are exempt as a charter school from paying stormwater assessments. And there's really 2 reasons that I want to discuss with you. The first, some of this gets kind of legal in the weeds. I have talked to Mr. Simpson and also Mr. Christopher Rowe. You guys have previously engaged to look at the stormwater assessment. But the issue here is whether or not this is a, quote, special assessment. if the stormwater assessment is a quote special assessment, then all parties are in agreement that the charter school is exempt from any special assessments. Mr. Rowe last year, who was the attorney for Bryant, Miller, and Olive, had issued a letter where he agreed, first of all, that charter schools are exempt from special assessments, but concluded, we believe incorrectly, that the stormwater assessment is not a special assessment. I want to point the City Commission to the ordinance that implements this stormwater assessment. I'm going to read from it. This is from the Land Development Code. It's section 9.10.03. It says a stormwater utility fee is hereby imposed for the general purposes described in section 9.10.02 above. Said fee shall be in the form of a special assessment. And then there's a quote that says non ad valorem on Volusia County's tax bill. And there's some more that's not necessarily relevant here, exactly what I'm saying. The ordinance itself calls this a special assessment. And so if you follow here, if it is a special assessment, everyone agrees that, that Ivy Hahn is exempt. Now, Mr. Rowe incorrectly, we believe, determined that this is a user fee. I understand from talking to Mr. Simpson, you guys have been briefed some or had a discussion about the difference between user fee and a special assessment. A user fee is more of a traditional utility fee, like you think that you pay your monthly electric bill. These are recurring, regular type of payments, usually from a utility. That's not what we have here. We believe that this is not a user fee. This is a special assessment that Ivy Hahn is exempt from. On the kind of second prong here that I want to discuss is the fact just of the treatment of Ivy Hahn as a charter school compared to other public schools. So first and foremost, in Florida, charter schools are public schools by law, and they're treated as public schools in almost every respect. The only difference is they're not operated by the school district, they're operated by a private nonprofit. After looking further at how other schools were being treated, just an example, Volusia Pines Elementary is a district school. It is not being charged or assessed as stormwater assessment. We believe, and there's some statutory provisions that I've shared with Mr. Simpson today that basically evidence local governments, a requirement that local governments treat charter schools the same as they treat district schools in almost every respect. And what Ivy Hahn's asking for is the same here. If the school district schools, which are public schools, are not being assessed as stormwater assessment, then they're asking as well to not be charged the stormwater assessment and be treated the same as other public schools in this respect. And so with that said, just to close here, the ask is that the commission recognize this exemption that we believe is clear under the law that Ivy Hahn as a charter school is exempt from the stormwater assessment. Thank you.
Yes, please.
This is going to take a little time. So,
I'll take my phone off.
as you mentioned, some of you, I think maybe all of you, possibly Len, I'm not sure, but we had a discussion a while back. Yeah.
You might go on.
It's not.
Is that better?
Just make it a little closer.
Is that better? There we go. Okay, so a while back, we had a discussion because the city was thinking about taking their stormwater charge and putting it on a utility bill instead of putting it on the ad valorem tax bill. And we had a discussion about comparing user fees and assessments and taxes. And the distinction between a user fee and a tax is very simple. The distinction between a user fee and assessment is not that simple. The Supreme Court has said that it's based on the totality of the facts. You look at all the particular circumstances, and is it more like a user fee or is it more like an assessment? And the case that Braxton provided to us is probably the same case I would use actually to support our side, because there's facts in there that I think would support the city's position that this is a user fee, not a tax, or not an assessment. But there's things in there that would support the Ivy Hahn's position that this is really more of a user fee assessment, not a user fee. And one of those things are, having to collect it. If you collect it one time a year, it looks more like an assessment. If you collect it routinely during a year, it looks more like a user fee. And what do you call it? There's one part where we refer to it being called an assessment for collection purposes, but throughout the rest of it, we refer to it as a utility fee, and we created a utility fund, public stormwater utility. But so it's, I would say like 50-50 when you kind of look at it, if you were to analyze it. But the thing that I think stands out to me is the last part that Braxton mentioned is charter schools are public schools. And so we need to treat charter schools and public schools the same way. There's two ways to do that. You don't charge either, or you charge everybody. Now, the Volusia County School District will not pay an assessment. I've dealt with that before. We on stormwater assessment. We turned around and put it on the utility bill, they pay it. Just now it's just how it shows up on their books, they will pay it. We looked at the data in Volusia County, and it's not consistent for charter schools. There's 8 charter schools, 4 pay stormwater assessments on the tax bill. 4 either don't pay any stormwater or they pay it through utility fee, or they're at least charged. We don't know if they paid on the assessment. We know that they were just levied an assessment. But this analysis and this discussion doesn't matter to everybody else, all the other property owners, because whether it's a fee or an assessment, they have to pay it. But when you talk about government property, it does matter, because they don't have to pay an assessment, but they do have to pay a user fee. And so that distinction gets really important as it relates just to government property. And we don't build one public school in Lake Helen a stormwater charge. We don't levy that charge. We don't charge the county fire building a stormwater fee. And that's probably where I'm more concerned, as opposed to looking at the Supreme Court analysis, because there's no question that a stormwater charge can be a user fee. That was in the Gainesville case that he and I both are kind of referring to. That was a stormwater fee that the DOT challenged, saying, hey, this is really an assessment. The Supreme Court said, no, it's a fee. Going through these different criteria. They said, no one criteria is controlling, and they kind of went through a bunch of different analysis. But in this particular case, I think what to me is very important is we're treating 2 public schools differently. And that's hard to justify. That would be the hard thing to justify. So what I would suggest, I talked to Jim about it, and this, as you mentioned, Chris Rose sent a letter last year when it came up. It wasn't really an issue before because 2 reasons. Ivy Hahn didn't own the property up until, 2016, 17, 18, somewhere in that time frame. Before that, they rented the property, from my understanding. Well, in that situation, they weren't the owners of the property, so they were a tenant. They were still obligated to pay the assessment. So until they became the owner, they didn't fall under this particular distinction. And secondly, our stormwater fee has been historically extremely low. And so basically, it really wasn't worth arguing about because it was very, very minor. Last year was the first year we increased it substantially, as you'll recall. Well, now all of a sudden it gets the attention of people who say maybe we shouldn't have to pay this, and now it gets worth, or at least it's more likely worth being able to argue about it. And so now they raised the issue last year. Chris Rowe responded to them, and actually it was first time it actually was raised is when they went through and they bought the property. Some of y'all may recall that we were involved in the financing of that. It kind of went through us. We didn't borrow the money. We're not technically on the hook for anything, but it had to go through a governmental entity, so they went through us. When they did that, they no longer had to pay the fire assessment. They became exempt from the fire assessment. There was a discussion, my understanding, at that time about the stormwater charge, And Chris Rowe told me, no, I don't view this as a special assessment that way. See, actually, state law allows you to fund a stormwater utility two ways. You can fund it through user fee, or you can fund it through an assessment. And then it goes on to say, even though you fund it as a user fee, you're allowed to use the non-ad valorem assessment process to collect it, even though it's a user fee, which is what we are doing. And that's why that reference is in the code to say it's going to be in the form of an assessment referencing that's how we're going to collect it. So Chris Rowe wrote the letter last year. There was no response, and the issue came up again this year. And that's when we looked more into the details, learned about how we do these, how we're not assessing it to the public schools. So how does that occur? My understanding is the property appraiser designates the property. And so public schools, they designate as public schools. Charter schools, on property appraisers' records, they designate as private school. They don't designate them as public school. So I think that's where they end up getting the assessment levied to them, because all private schools would still have to pay the assessment. But if it's a charter school, it technically is not a private school, it is a public school. So I think that might be where some of the confusion comes from. But in any event, my recommendation, and I've talked to Jim about this, is I would recommend that we take Ivy Hunt off the assessment roll this year on the condition that they do not seek a refund for past years. If they're willing to not seek a refund for past years, we'll not collect it this year. And then it would be the commission would have to give direction to the staff. If we want to charge government properties a stormwater charge, we need to make sure that it is clearly a user fee. So what we would need to do is identify all government properties within Lake County, and then come up with amend our ordinance to allow us to do a user charge on the utility bill. Make sure it's clearly a user fee and it's on the utility bill as opposed to being collected on the assessment. This doesn't affect anyone other than, to the best of my knowledge, will not affect anyone else other than government property. I would also suggest that if we're going to, and the only one who's going to challenge this as an assessment would be obviously someone who would benefit from it being declared an assessment, which would be government property. So we need to beef up our regulation to make sure it's clear this is a user fee, not an assessment. One of the things I would suggest we look at then, if that's the route you want to go, is making clear that it is, one of the things for a user fee is there's a correlation between the impact, the benefit and the use between the two. And that it can be, it's voluntary, user fee is voluntary, so you can avoid payment. And so what I would suggest that we look into doing, if we're going to go that route, is creating a credit for on-site retention. That somebody would not pay as much of a user fee, or they would get a credit. And I think, I talked to Jim, Deltona has seems like a very good process for people to apply for and to get a credit. That we look at creating that process so that people would, so if you had the same size piece of property and the same amount of impervious surface, but one was built 40 years ago when we didn't have stormwater, and one was just built last year where we had stormwater retention, the one that was built 40 years ago is going to discharge and impact our stormwater system greater than somebody who has an on-site retention system, because they will be retaining property by law onto their property. And so that's the kind of justification for creating credit. That also makes it look more like a user fee. If you choose to say, look, let's just take Ivy Hunt off the bill, but we don't want to go charging a stormwater fee to other government properties, that's the easiest thing to do. That obviously is. Or you have the option of keeping Ivy Hunt on the assessment roll, in which case, they've indicated that they will seek a challenge, and if they challenge it, they will seek a refund for all past years, and we'll have to see what the court does. But in terms of my recommendation, it would not be have them on the assessment roll issue. But if you want to go out, I don't want to say go after, that's not the right way to say it, but if you want to charge government property for stormwater, which jurisdictions do. Then I think we need to do that as a user fee, and we need to tweak our ordinance, make it clear. And as a user fee, we need to do it through the utility bill, and not use the assessment process that's allowed under state law with putting it on the property tax bill. Just so there's no confusion anymore, that there's no reference to assessment, and we're not even putting it on the tax bill. We'll just bill monthly to the government, or quarterly, when we send out the water.
Jim?
Yes, Mayor, in talking with Scott, I've reached out to every city in Volusia County and the county. The city of DeBary charges private schools, charter schools, a stormwater utility fee on the tax bill. Deltona charges private charter schools a stormwater fee on the utility tax bill. DeBary charges charter schools a stormwater utility fee on the tax bill. The city of DeLand notified me today they charge public schools and private schools. They do it through their utility system. The city of Edgewater has said they charge public schools and private schools. Why the public school in Volusia, in Lake Helen didn't make the bill, maybe because we're using the ad valorem trim. So the issue of that private schools and public schools are not subject to the stormwater utility, I don't believe that's an argument, because it's being done and it's being collected all over the county. I agree with Scott that maybe this 1 year, we pull this 1 year reprieve so we can take a look at our ordinance and make sure that we're in line exactly with those that are collecting both public school and private schools. And as Scott explained to me, Deltona has a program where any entity that is charged can apply annually for a 50% reduction, but there's a lot of burden on them through engineering and showing what they're doing to maintain their systems and what have you. The only reason I add that is I think that the right move tonight is to avoid it for the 24-25 year for I.B. Hahn, and then we've got time to sit back and look and see, and look at those communities then that are they are collecting the utility fee, public and private, so they are treating all schools the same, and we can bring you back that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question that a publicly owned, government-owned property can be charged a user fee. Like I said, the Gainesville place validated a stormwater, determined it to be a user fee on DOT property. So that was validated, it can be done. You just have to make sure it is a user fee and not an assessment. And there's not one particular thing I can point to say that's what makes the difference. You know, I can give you all the Supreme Court case and probably the documents we went over a year and a half ago when we talked about it, discussed the difference between them and how it's a case-by-case basis. It's not always clear. It's a judgment call sometimes. But because we're not treating two public schools the same, that's really the tipping point for me. That I think we ought to step back and say, let's reevaluate this and make sure we're treating, and we have a more defensible position if somebody wants to challenge the Lakers. And that would be my recommendation.
The purpose of this meeting, because this is the final reading, so we have to make a decision before. I understand. But my point is that this is what has to happen today. What you just described sounds like you put a lot of thought into it. Have that been discussed so that you guys formulated this?
It's been a lot of thought given to it in the last couple of days.
Last couple of days.
Yeah, so it wasn't like something that was percolated for a while.
I just wanted to make sure.
And Mayor, I think there is a deadline tomorrow with the tax appraiser's office for any of these changes to be finalized, so it would be notifying them, to remove that for the 24-25 year. And then we have time to set back and get our ordinance in line with those that are charging both private and public schools, so they're all being treated the same, and it's a stormwater utility fee. It's not an assessment.
Okay. Discussion? We have
I just want to play devil's advocate here on the school stormwater. And I appreciate you all being here. But they fought up a lot of buildings along Ohio. So are they going to be exempt from paying taxes on the assessment on that, because that's still technically part of Ivy Hahn? So will that whole section be exempt? Because if that's the case, what's to stop them from continuing to buy?
Well, probably nothing, actually, but, you know, the law says if what we charge is an assessment, it is a stormwater assessment, they're exempt, okay? If it's an assessment, they're exempt. But the law also says we can charge a stormwater fee, which they have to pay. The issue is, are we charging them is it what we have, a fee or an assessment?
Well, I get that.
And so,
But the more property they buy,
if we charge a fee, they
if
still
we
have to
charge
pay.
a fee. So my ask is to change this to a fee. Because I'm going to tell you, if you go the other route, the Woods of Lake Helen will be asking for a reduction in their stormwater assessment because we're self-contained in our stormwater. We have no effect on Lake Helen. So keep that in mind. As a matter of fact, I would like for you all to consider that. If you're going to exempt Ivy Hahn, exempt the Woods of Lake Helen, because we are self-contained. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to find out the attorney that spoke earlier. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. You made a statement that a charter school is mostly like a public school. What part is it mostly like a public school?
May I approach?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Ms. Donato, thank you. So some of the ways that it's like a public school, it's tuition-free, open to any child that enrolls. It's publicly funded. Teachers have to be certified. Is that the kind of things that you're?
She wants to know why now is it not? I think you said not, right?
Okay, yeah, okay, how is it not like a public school? Oh, a traditional public school? Yeah, I mean, the way that it's not like a traditional public school is that it's not operated by the school district. So there's a nonprofit company that has its own board who's overseeing the school. Now, there is a charter contract that's between the charter school and the school district. The school district exercises regulatory oversight and they make sure that the charter school is compliant with the law. But the school district can't dictate the day-to-day operations and things like that. And that's the real distinction. Otherwise, in all of the respects, they have to do all the things that traditional schools do.
So if they're a not-for-profit, then they don't have to pay taxes on the tuition that they receive, correct?
One clarification, they don't receive tuition. They get funded the same way that traditional district schools do, which is for each child that you have, you're getting a certain amount of funding per child, and that's coming from state and local taxes. But they are nonprofit, so they do not pay taxes on that income that they are getting. That is correct.
And also, then I would say that state law says that charter schools are public. I mean, that's in state law. So it's not, we have to make a decision as a charter school, a public school. State law clearly says that they are public schools for all intents and purposes.
So then we also have homeschool kids that go to school out of their homes and their parents are having to pay for stormwater. And they are literally going through homeschooling through the public school system. So they're having to pay for stormwater. And this is news to me. I had not heard anything about this issue coming up, though I do have some questions about the whole thing. I get that tomorrow's the 13th and, the 11th hour. I don't know why we have, I do agree with our attorney that it does not seem fair that we have two schools. One's public, one's charter, one's not paying, the other is. That any in taxes or revenue.
No taxes, but I think the stormwater assessment, I haven't seen the new and rate change, but I think it was 85.
8,500.
8,500.
Yeah.
Yes, 8,500 on the current, and just for perspective, this is from what was being discussed, I did look the last 5 years. The total amounts paid in totality those 5 years was about 18,500, just for perspective in terms of discussing what actually paid.
So 18,000 over a period of 5 years.
Correct.
That was, last year we did the big increase, I think it was 7,000
Yeah.
and like 8,000, so 15, 16,000 of that 8,000 is what, are you counting this year's in that 18?
No, so this year is about 8,500, the last 5 years were 7,000, 4,700, and then just over 2,000 prior 3 years.
So the 8,500 is not included in the 18?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Has there been any exchange of writing from them to you and to return? Are we just now hearing about it now?
The call happened this week,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's why, wrapping this up and even getting into this meeting was getting information. And maybe when I get back to the office by tomorrow, all the cities in Volusia County may have gotten back with me. Some have no stormwater fee period, so it doesn't matter in terms of their, but those who have it are either collecting it on the tax roll or they're collecting it on a utility bill, which means everybody's getting their stormwater utility assessment as in addition to their water and their stormwater utility bill, so it's just a portion of the bill.
Well, the way I see it, I don't quite like it, but I think at this point in time, we need to defer to our attorney and lean on his legal knowledge since tomorrow is the 13th. I don't think we have much choice.
I agree with the attorney's assessment on this assessment. My concern is that when the ordinance was adopted, creating it and everything, the terms that they used created conflicts that we're running into now. So,
Adopted back in 2000.
yeah, and so I think that we need to have a workshop on it and review it and come up with a better way of doing the system. But I agree, let them off this year as long as they're agreeing not to request back payments.
The other thing is that the charter school, when it first came here, it was a tenant. It was owned by another party. They were renters, and then they became the owners. So the transition between tenant owner also took some, I guess, jostling. And then the city also, we floated a bond in order for them to be able to purchase it. I remember we did it, but I don't remember what it was. And
They had to, in like a 30,000 foot level, I believe to get the tax exempt financing, it had to sort of flow through the city. We didn't issue the bonds, we're not obligated on the bonds. We're like a conduit for them to get the tax exempt financing. They didn't have to use Lake Helen, they could actually use any tax exempt entity in the state, maybe outside the state, to do it. They came to Lake Helen to say, hey, we'd like to do it here since we're here, because we make some money off of that. I don't know how much it is, but I do know we were making some money off of that. And I do know that they agreed to pay a kind of a lump sum fee when we did it to help offset the loss of the fire system. I remember that discussion too. So there was a payment, I don't know how much it was.
I think it was about $60,000 in that number. I was on it, and they gave it to us as a lump sum, actually, in assisting the upkeep of the park, because now the kids were using the park and they didn't have a playground, so they supplemented our parks about, I think it's $5,000 a year or something like that. But they were working with us as a partner, and they were transitioning in, and we, as a city, were also transitioning. They increased their staff or enrollment doubled because they were able to purchase the entire complex as opposed to having the first building that they had. And then when they were offered to buy the whole complex, they bought the whole complex. They had to come back to the city to ask for an additional, I think it was another 400 students. So now you're up to about 900, 800 kids?
950.
About 900? 950, plus they have about 100 staff. So it's about 1,000 residents, or not residents, they're not residents, but 1,000 people a day coming to our city, coming through that charter school. And I'll just say that we did have the challenges of transportation and traffic, and they've been working with us. They have worked with us in the past to try to alleviate that because it was definitely an impact. So that is something that we've given them. I give them credit for having made that.
And I think that the last thing to add, not to confuse with Mr. Sniffen's comment, if we have a workshop, we bring back, and if the end of the day is to adopt a utility system, it would have a component to do exactly what Mr. Sniffen was talking about. Those with their own stormwater systems, showing that they're being maintained, engineered, and not needed, would be able to apply for a credit of their stormwater assessment, recognizing that they're taking care of it and doing their process. And we don't have that right now in our ordinance. And that's what Deltona and some of the other cities have. So that would alleviate, I think, the Woods' concerns in the sense that they would have an avenue to be able to apply back to the city, at least for credit, recognizing that they're already taking care of their own infrastructure and their own ponds.
What was the reference to having to find out just how many government buildings are in?
Well, I think, I'm just thinking about if I was y'all, what would I want to know if I was going to make a decision? And what I would want to know, this isn't a question really just about, if you want to do a stormwater charge, I'm just going to call it a charge, to Ivy Pond, you're going to have to do it with Volusia County Schools. I think that's a given. But this is a way you can also charge all government property. So how much government property do we have in the city? I don't know the answer to that. I do know we have the firehouse, Volusia County Firehouse. I know in talking to another city I represent, when I was asking how they do it, and this is the one I dealt with several years ago, many years ago, in the school district, they also charge HOAs, common area, because common areas aren't taxed. But common areas may have impervious surface that need to be. So I think if we say, like I said, if we just say, let's just not charge the schools or Ivy Pond, okay, simple. If you want to charge the schools or Ivy Pond, we ought to look at other non-taxable property and say, okay, who else could be taxed in this way? And then we better make sure we have a very solid footing as a user fee. That brings in the credit part of it. You're going to get a credit for on-site retention for a portion of it. That's one of the things I think that would help us argue or be able to solidify, this is a user fee, this is not an assessment. That is one of the things that we're looking for.
Thank you.
So, step one is this year. Step two is how do y'all want to go prospectively. You don't have to answer step two tonight, but that's the workshop possibly that Roger was thinking about. How do y'all want to move forward and deal with this perspective?
Suggestions or motions?
Well, for tonight, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to take property from the stormwater assessment for the 24-25 year. On the condition that they don't
They waive any rights to refunds prior to assessment. Yeah.
What the attorney said.
Is that clear? Motion and second?
You good with that?
The amendment, I'm sorry.
We got a motion on the floor. So
We're doing it.
Ivy Hunter representative said they're good with that.
Yeah.
I talked to them before,
Okay.
and they said they probably would be, kind of get it on the record. But what I want to do is put together a simple document for the city and Ivy Hunter to sign and say this. And I'll get it to them, I'll say tonight, or tomorrow.
Simple documents are like.
What's that?
Said we all know what your simple documents are like.
So we are clear. Motion second. Do we have a vote? Yes. Motion second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All in favor? So moved.
Now the motion as amended.
As the amended part of the motion,
The motion for the resolution as amended.
okay, repeat that. That's what he said.
The motion was for accepting resolution 24-01 as amended.
As amended. Second.
Yes, second.
All in favor? Aye. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, where are we now? I think we're going through the fees. We're now to public hearing, first reading resolution. Approve fees and fines.
Resolution number 2024-09, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Lake Allen, Florida, approving a fee and fine schedule for the 2024-2025 fiscal year, providing an effective date. I believe this will be the first and only reading. This is not first reading, it will not be coming back to you for second reading, so this is the first and only reading. Just for clarification.
Motion to accept the resolution 2024-09.
Second.
Move second. All in favor?
I'm trying to speak on that. Go ahead.
All the motion.
Discussion?
Have a card up there.
Yes, Todd, sorry. Todd Preston? Thank you for that.
Thank you for reminding us something.
Thank you. Todd Preston, 352 Connecticut Avenue, as always. Just want to point out a couple of things on your fee schedule before you approve this. In your agenda, it's on page 19. You have tree removal fees. Line number 2 says tree recompense value, $30 per DBH. So the way I read that, that means that you're charging $30 per tree. Should that read per inch DBH? Because DBH stands for diameter at breast height. And the way your fees read right now, you're only charging by the tree. Line 3 says maintenance recompense, $10 per DBH. And I believe that should read per inch per DBH. Otherwise, you're only going to get a recompense fee for the tree, not per inch of diameter. So you have something missing there.
And then recompense for the diameter is if someone takes down a bigger tree, it will be a bigger fine.
Right, when somebody takes down, yes, when they take a bigger tree, you replace it, you're paying per inch of the diameter at breast height. That's not the way your fee schedule reads. So I recommend that you change that before you approve it. Also, further down on the same page, you have facility rentals. Melissa Park reads $100, and Shuffleboard reads $100. Is this per day, week, month, or year? Because the way it reads, they can rent it and not vacate it. So I would recommend that you be more specific on that before you pass it.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
City Administrator, any comments on that?
No. The only comment, I think Tom raises a good question, that maybe just we have a note or something on here that explains what that diameter is on there. But this fee schedule is the fee schedule that you have. So this is not, these aren't new. The only new that has been added to the fee schedule is if there's any update to the animal ordinance based on the tethering law that we passed. And the only other thing that I know that's new that's added is the credit card conveniency that will be assessed starting October 1 for anyone paying, whether it be their utility bill, their development application, or their permits in terms of their. So all the other language on here has been part of your fee schedule for some time. And I think Todd pointed out just a couple of areas there, so a motion could be made, just having staff note, providing a little definition of what that diameter means, and we can have that done, I think, after the fact.
Okay, and for his comments about the rental of Melissa Park and the shuffleboard building, I believe that's outlined within the document once you rent, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know, do you recommend that we update that or just leave it as is?
We'll take a look, but I think that's in the rental agreement, and if there's any conflict or whatever, then we can bring back. The idea of the fee schedule being a standalone item, we can bring this to you any meeting and do ups and changes and whatever in terms of there. So because it's part of the budget process, it would be ideal to at least get that passed tonight with definitely Todd's notes on there that we can adjust, and then we can look at the rental agreements that dictate that time that's on there. Because I don't think he's got a point in saying that they could be there forever, but I think we have a specific time when they're out, and they would be charged extra if they were out for a given time.
Thank you.
Well, if you go like similar, like what they have for Hopkins Hall, you just add in the weekday rate.
Yeah.
That's all that have to be added to it.
Good point. Yes, sir.
I can remember at one point, Melissa Park was renting in the morning and or afternoon, so it wasn't always an all-day thing. So that's that.
So we can look at those few things, but the intent of your schedule is pretty much there. Like I said, the only changes were if there was a change in animal with the new tethering and the credit card fee.
Okay. Further discussion? Motions? Where are we again? Oh, we already done. Okay. Is all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All in favor? So moved. Unanimous. We got down to the consent agenda. If there's any discussion, we can do it all in one, or do you want to do it individually?
If they do it individually, there needs to be a motion to pull that item from the consent agenda.
Okay. So on the consent agenda, any item that would like to be dealt with separately? You make a motion.
I'd make a motion that we will be approval of the meeting minutes.
Minutes?
And the bills.
So we're making. All right, so we go all of
So if the minutes have been pulled, then you could go forward with a motion to approve the other two items on consent, and we can do that.
I think you should also hold those.
All three.
Yeah, actually, pulled two, and the third one is the one that's left.
Let me ask a question for future meetings, and again, this is not adversarial or whatever, but we're doing this every meeting, so do we just want to eliminate the consent agenda? Because it's not serving its purpose, so we're going to discuss each item, I'd rather than just put it on for discussion, and we don't have to go through the process of pulling it and not pulling it, because single consent agenda that has been here and gone through has never been passed without something being pulled, so it'd be easier than just to say, we've done away with the consent agenda and we'll just put them on as regular items. Would that be easier?
It does sound logical, however, if there was an item on the consent agenda that may not be following state statute, where do we stand there just by putting it over into a discussion barrel?
Yeah, you could pull an item. If it's only if one item on there, you could pull it and then pass the other consent agenda items. But if we're pulling 3 each time, and again, it's not adversarial, I would just say, then let's not put it on consent, and let's just put it in there as individual items for the discussion.
Just for a refresher, what would be the normal reason for in a consent agenda that all of the items that were listed would be handled as one? What was the idea of that?
Typically, it doesn't happen. Once in a while, a question will come up, maybe, like Lynn said, there may be something in the minutes, in a sentence or a word or something might be different, and that can be corrected from the dais. But if every item has always got an issue on it, then it defeats the whole purpose. Because the idea of the consent agenda really is that you make a motion, you accept the consent agenda, and there's not a whole lot of discussion or debate going on. It's kind of like
Would it be a normal practice, or would it be a practice that there's an issue on any of the consent agenda that they would be noticed before the meeting? Would that be something that would be?
every commissioner has the right to notify Roxanne and I, for example, if someone sees something in the minutes and says, I have an issue on that. You know, if it's a typo or something like that, we can have that fixed and repaired and brought in. But if it's a real concern about something is written as a comment, and someone feels that's not what the comment was said or not was meant, then, you know, we can do that adjustment, but then that still has to be approved by the board.
Okay, well, in this instance, where we are right now.
Yeah, we'll go with what we've got, and then we can talk about them.
Okay. We're going to talk about the first the minutes and then the bills. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Discussion on the minutes.
Yeah.
7A.
And we'll be back into the commissioners' comments.
It's 32 of 3.
Yeah, I did.
It's 33.
My only concern is the reason I can't pass them or pass the motion or make a motion is that when the zone commissioner spoke at the last meeting, every commissioner has been reported as stating something until we get down to zone 4. And then zone 4, it states that there was no comment, and that's not true. There were comments at that meeting. It's on page.
I see it. It's on page 33.
33?
Yeah.
33E.
Yes, it's chopped up. It's the last.
So that's the only thing that I've noticed, and I don't know why zone 4 was left out with no comments, because certainly we all had comments that night.
The point that Commissioner Janai is bringing up is each one of the, I'm just reading for the public who doesn't have it. Each one of the commissioners made a comment. I'll read what the comments were. team citizens, reactions and strategies. That was Mayor Burton. 2, it was on 1, Heather Rutledge, grant writing, women's NAACP luncheon donation. Vice Mayor Roger Eckert, relationships and perceptions. Commissioner Donata, team and professionalism. And for Commissioner Bishop, there's no comment, so there's nothing listed there. How did we get to no comment? That would be the question.
Well, yeah, I mean, under Florida statute, we obviously have to have minutes that are accurate. That evening,
Just so you know, the
the
Florida
audio is
statute doesn't
working.
require any level of detail in minutes.
I know.
So it doesn't, verbatim, they can just say commissioner comments, and don't even list anything. But if we're gonna list one, we should treat them all the same, I agree with that. But there's no specific level of detail required by Florida law.
No, I know, because you can have just action minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, the recording of the meeting is the official full version, but you're right, maybe we need to go back and look and come up with a summary of a sentence or something that meets that one.
I just bring it up because our audio system isn't all that well. And there were people who wanted to hear that meeting, and the audio system wasn't working that well. So if we don't have the audio working, if we don't have a recording going on, then we've got to rely on paper.
Are you speaking about, the audio is posted?
No, it's posted, but it's.
But you're talking about the, I did speak to the newspaper who had, the reporter was there at the meeting, but they did not stay for the commission reports by zone. And whomever they did speak to said that they had the recording, but they weren't going to send it to the person because it was their private recording. So they did not get any information. The recording didn't have any information.
So yeah, no, I'm not speaking. I'm not speaking about someone's private recording. I'm speaking about what's coming out of City Hall.
Ma'am, I think she's referring to our recording, the recording that's going on right now. Any cameras or whatever in here are not our official recording.
Okay.
We're talking about the recording that we have.
So you're saying that there was no recording, you said you couldn't hear?
No,
There's no comment.
there was, where she didn't type in there that I made a comment.
Okay.
She said no comment. So she's questioning the minutes.
I see. Yes, know what you're saying.
Yeah,
I understand.
I'd like it to be complete.
Yeah, it would be completed there instead of
I think the only way to properly deal with that is to let them go back and redo the minutes and bring it back to you next meeting. They can't address it right now.
exactly.
Sure.
Table it,
Thank you.
and we bring back the next meeting.
That's about
Motion to table.
motion.
Make a motion that we table it.
Second
Do
motion.
it and come back.
Second.
Second. Second. All right, all in favor? All right. Thank you very much. The second one, you want the bills?
There were a couple of items that, thank you, that I noticed in the approval report. A lot of painting seemed to be going on in town. My main concern, I think the variance report turned out great, but there's some issues in here that I don't quite understand, that I've seen nothing on, actually. We've got paint for well houses, we've got paint for bathrooms, we've got paint everywhere. And then we've hired, it looks like a painter. for $1,000. Are these the bathrooms in the parks? What's being painted?
Rick?
They're the park bathrooms, yes.
The park bathrooms?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How's that coming along?
They're done now.
They are?
Yep.
I can't see this one right. I saw something in here that had to do with the roof, like it was an engineer that had done some roof work over at City Hall.
Yep.
I'm going behind. It's unbelievable. I highlighted the frog. I'd like to know how we're coming along with that. With,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
the frog.
Frog.
Yeah, frog.
Yeah.
For the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, what actually, I can ask Con to come back to do an update because we're meeting all of the deadlines and getting prepared in reference to the 24, 25 in terms of that. So I can ask her to come back at the next meeting and update exactly where we're at in that process. We're in regular communication between emails from FROC and us in terms of that point, and I know that the deadline came up in reference for the 24, 25, and we have met that, and providing purchasing agreements and policies and things that we're going to do. But I can ask Con to come back to the October meeting and do an update.
We hadn't heard anything on it, and I see that on the same date she got 2 checks, different invoices, obviously. So I was just wondering about that.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of questions on the bills paid.
I'll ask her to come to the 10-11 meeting and give us an update on that.
Well, then maybe our CA will do us an update. Okay, thanks.
I said we have to pay her for that. We have to pay Con to come to the meeting.
Yes, but to do an update right there. But yeah, I'll get it. Okay.
So then would it be better for you to do the update?
Well, I can get that from her, so we'll have a conversation based on
Okay.
what level we think we want to do in terms of exactly where we're at. But I'll talk with you.
So we clear on the bills?
Yeah.
And you said that the variance report was okay?
The variance report was right.
Any questions or any comments? Okay. So can we make a motion?
Motion that we accept the bills paid in the variance report.
Second. Motion moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor? Pass. Okay. Moving right along. Oh, we're down to 8. The Little Pantry contract review, 8A.
Did you jump in the budget variance report?
Yes.
We did include that. That wasn't a problem. That's on you.
At the last meeting, the commission had asked for Scott to send an agreement for the resident to sign involving the pantry. The agreement was sent out. We were told we'd get back comments involving the agreement. We did not get any comments back involving the agreement in reference to verbiage changes or any clarifications. The email we did get back was that they were not going to sign an agreement that the city has presented for the food pantry. And in the meantime, We reached out to the insurance firm, and since the city has allowed it and it's on city property, the city is at risk for someone who could get sick, someone who could put tainted material or items that are in there. So without an agreement, I believe the city is in no position but to ask for the pantry to be removed, because we need to be able to have that responsibility and that liability on the person that's maintaining. And if they're unable to sign an agreement and they don't want to sign an agreement, procedure calls that we can give them 5 days notice to remove it. If they're unable to remove it in 5 days, we can work with them, or I can ask Public Works to remove it, keep it in Public Works, and then it can be picked up and go from there. But we are now on notice by the Florida League of Cities, our insurance company. We have exposure and we have liability. And there were comments made last week that people were putting items in there that were inappropriate, were spoiled, that were bad. There's packets of things in there that somebody could eject something into. Somebody could coat packages in fentanyl. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy people out there or whatever today. Our job is to minimize legal jeopardy and legal liability for the city. So without an agreement, as city administrator, I have no other recommendation that the council make a motion that the pantry be removed.
Do we have any more discussion?
I want to hear from Nancy.
We have 2 people. Mark Parrish.
Mark Lee Parrish, 139 West Park Street, Mayor, Commissioners. I saw some of the back and forth on social media and when this came up before the commission, that when the pantry was put in, things were not well defined and that sort of thing. And in the community, it did become a question of whether there is liability, and the city administrator just clarified that there is. So my comment is that there should be a very compelling reason for it to be in that location when there are myriad other places that something that good could exist at. A not-for-profit, a private residence, and that sort of thing. So it's not a question about whether it's a good thing, it's a question of whether it's in the right place. So if, commissioners, I would say, if we wanted to succeed, if you want to see that good work done in the community, then City Hall is not the place for it to be, for the reasons that have come up. It shouldn't be tainted by controversy. It shouldn't be a liability to the community. In fact, even if there was a way to say that there is no liability, even the potential for a lawsuit that would have to be defended, where the city would have to spend money to defend a lawsuit, is, in my opinion, not worth it. So I urge you all to just vote to make a motion to remove the pantry and second it, and vote unanimously to have it relocated.
Thank you. Nancy Weary.
The contract I received on August 12th was not the simple, congenial agreement that was discussed and agreed upon by all parties during the August 8th City Commission meeting. I spoke with Mr. Simpson prior to that meeting and was told by him at that time the agreement he was seeking was simple, not an issue I even needed to have my attorney review. However, after receiving the agreement from Mr. Gleason on August 12th, and the agreement not reflecting the discussion and agreements made by all parties on August 8th, and upon my inquiry of seemingly similar agreements and or contracts to compare with, and the information derived from my inquiry, I did ask my attorney to review the agreement I was presented. I was advised not to sign the agreement for several reasons. To address some of those reasons, In reference to 1, no Exhibit A was provided as referred to. Number 2, the agreement outlines the separation of city, but in 3, retains control. Number 4 wants to make this agreement retroactive back to the pantry's inception over 3.5 years ago. To add to those points, and to again reference 2, I am being asked to agree to assume liability for what has clearly become a target by certain individuals who have blatantly worked together to purposely cause detriment to this pantry and or to use it as a weapon against me personally. As has been documented, and you all are aware, the pantry has served our neighbors in need in our community for over 3.5 years without issue until recent when certain individuals began their crusade against me, not the pantry. Again, these acts have been documented. The removal of the little pantry really isn't about the pantry. It originated as an act against me, just as those same individuals have sought to abolish Crosses for Christ Lake Helen. So in short, if the pantry is removed, it will be as a result of these individuals fulfilling their personal, quote, hate, unquote, agendas. Not a result of anything the little pantry, its donors, its volunteers, or I have failed to do. If the commission as a whole supports the removal of the pantry under the circumstances presented to you, then the appearance is that you support that behavior. If the commission values what is good and positive, and that this little pantry has represented to and for our community, I believe an agreement such as what was discussed and agreed upon previous, either 3.5 years ago or even last month, can be had. The choice is the commission's. I am fully prepared to continue with its service as I have done the past 3.5 years, or remove it. Personally, I believe removing something that has brought so much positive to our community to appease hate is not the answer.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes, please. I have some. So maybe my question needs to be directed to Ms. Weary. Did you provide this feedback to our city attorney during this hearing, or could you provide what changes you'd like to see? I haven't seen a draft of those comments, and I'm not clear on what you're thinking is different from the last meeting into here. I think maybe I just need further clarification.
I did not, because it became such a back and forth. I didn't want the city to incur the legal fees with Mr. Simpson. And I thought it was something better for full discussion rather than the back and forth. Clearly, we have people here who really are just against it. Really, we have people here who are just against it, and it's,
you know, how do you combat that? How do you combat something that has served our community, our neighbors in need? And like us or not, everybody like each other, we are all neighbors. And we have community people here that are truly in need and in service system. It wasn't a liability per se until basically 3 months ago when it became a crusade by a couple of citizens and a commissioner. Prior to that, we didn't have any issues. It was service. I maintained it. The city had no responsibility per se for it. Nobody had to go out there and check it. There was not a problem with it.
I understand your position. My thoughts are, I mean, we all, at least I can speak for myself, I feel that serving our community in need is of value. But my concern lies in liability and putting together a contract. So if this contract is not agreeable, I would like to find what is agreeable so that we can move forward with what was discussed. And so, I mean, I'm disappointed that we don't have that tonight.
So previously, we had talked about with Mr. Simpson. He has been our attorney for many years. He was here 3.5 years ago. He did not feel from a legal position, which he's our lawyer, that there was a liability.
Yes, I did.
Did you?
Yes, because I proposed the lease agreements which you refused to sign because of the insurance requirement that was on there. The city didn't require it. I advised the commission at the time they ought to have a lease agreement with insurance. I get it, it's expensive. The commission some members on the commission said it was a civic duty, whatever. Y'all chose to go forward, not y'all, specific, the commission at the time chose to go forward contrary to what my advice was. Fine, you can do that, but don't say I never said it was a
Okay,
liability.
well, that's my misunderstanding, because I did not.
Let me just finish. There's, you could easily, this was sent to you for review, Exhibit A was going to be attached. That's not a reason for denying this. It was just going to be a picture of the area, drawn out where it was, very simple. Paragraph 2 are all things I either heard you say or write that you will do. And you just said, you took care of everything. That's what I put in here. You'll take care of everything. You follow the law, you inspect it, you do everything. And yes, we do need to retain control over it, and from the standpoint of if you don't, if there's something dangerous out there, we've got to be able to remove it. That's what I retain. Or, I've heard you say, you thought we had a verbal agreement ever since. So why couldn't we make a written agreement retroactive to the beginning to make sure this clearly says? If there's one thing in paragraph 2 that you haven't said, that you agreed to, I'd like to know what it is. Because these are all things that I think you said you'll inspect it, the food or your volunteers will inspect it, you take care of the grass, we had an issue about the grass mowing, the city mowed it, you'll maintain that, you'll maintain the facility, you make sure you comply with whatever the laws out there. Because remember, the city didn't go out, the commission did not say, you know, it'd be nice to have a food pantry. So let's go out and ask the public to provide us one. And after asking me to go, what are all the legal requirements? That's not how this happened. You came in, you volunteered it. I don't know what the legal requirements are. You said you would take care of it, so this is all your responsibility. So I think this is a simple agreement. Anytime an attorney puts together a one-page agreement, it's pretty simple. From an attorney's perspective.
It wasn't you.
So, but I think this addresses what we talked about. And we are going to attach A. I didn't go there to take a picture of it. You know, we need to take a picture and draw out. A will be attached. It was for you to say, here's the agreement we talked about. I don't see anything in here that, one, we didn't discuss, or you mentioned in the past, or two, that I can tell the commission, yeah, it's okay to take out. We need to be able to get, if the next commission says, or this commission has a change of heart, says, look, we need to end this relationship, they need to be able to end this. So yes, we do retain the right to terminate this agreement with cause or without cause, and if somebody, we get notice that somebody got sick there, and probably the thing I'm most worried about would be medication. Somebody puts like cough syrup in there, and it's before you can go check it, and it's expired, and then somebody grabs it, somebody could, get sick from that. Because I don't think anybody will eat spoiled food. That's not going to happen.
There's some things I can't control.
And there is, and I told you you ought to create an entity to protect you liability wise. You want to do it individually, that's fine. But I just don't see anything in this agreement.
Well, I think part of that, what you just mentioned, creating an entity, I am not interested in becoming an LLC for the Soul Pantry, or to become a nonprofit for this. It gets into some of this stuff, and that's where a lot of the problems lie, is, I can, for what? I'm trying to help people. If I go out and spend hundreds of dollars on that in addition to what I've already spent, I mean, what is,
But I think this agreement puts on writing, on paper, everything that you have represented, you're going to do. I don't think I added anything here.
Can we bring it back as we're on this side to discuss it?
Well, she's,
I understand that.
It's going to be indirectly.
That's kind of what we're now. That's not where we're at right now.
I heard the three things she said.
I'd like to have something to say about it as well. The fact that there are you just made a number of accusations about individuals who are nameless, about situations that we all supposedly know about, but I don't know about. So I think it's the point where we are discussing this for the purposes of the minimum that we're looking at this is so that the city does not put itself in legal jeopardy. All that other stuff that's being floated out there, I think the bottom line is that if our responsibility is to maintain a situation that does not put the city in jeopardy. And you've described through your writings that there have been attempts to sabotage that particular location. So now it's become a center of attention, it's become a target. So once a target has been put on somebody's back, or somebody's been targeting an entity, that entity is now a problem. The solution isn't just to just keep it there and just see how far the problem can grow. It would be best to, if there's a problem, find a solution. And the solution that we have right now is that this is an entity that the city is not wanting to be liable for. You're bringing this to the city with all good intentions, but you're also not assuming liability. So for the purposes of where we are right now, this has gotten a lot of paper. It's taken a lot of time. It has put a lot of energy into our city resources. And the other thing I just want to remind you and for the commissioners, that the city attorney works for the city commission, and the city attorney should, as far as I'm concerned, Scott, in terms of your interactions with citizens besides the city commission, is that a normal practice? In other words, if a citizen calls you up for...
No, I typically do not respond to this. I will let Jim know, let Jim contact.
Okay, but when you do have the correspondence with a citizen, is that billed?
Well, I don't have correspondence unless directed by the city. And at that time, it is billed. Like, in this particular case, I don't think I corresponded with Nancy on this. Yeah, we had a discussion at the meeting. I drafted the agreement and sent it to Jim.
Well, I've never had a conversation with you. We've never talked about anything. You never sent me, I did get some of your emails.
You would have gotten all the emails that everybody else
I'm speaking about talking, trying to pick up the phone, taking their version. I really think that you should do one thing or another. We have never had that conversation.
Well,
and I've always been open to anybody that wants to call. If you look at my phone, log, very few people don't get called back. And I'm one that I don't know what you know, but I do know what you say in public that concerns me. That if you're saying that there are people that are out to get you, if you said there are people that are looking to harm the city by way of getting at you, then that also puts me in someone's concern for your sake as well, because you did mention that your safety is involved as well, and I wouldn't want you to be put in a position that would make you uncomfortable or unsafe. So where we are right now, thank you. Where we are right now, I'd just like to hear from the rest of the commission. Yes, sir.
Well, this is a liability for the city if there is no contract for it being there. And right now, we're running into a problem with what she believes to be improper wording in the contract, and they want to work on it different. You know, work up some different language or something, I'm not sure. I've had long discussions and sent her emails about it, and like the attorney said, everything that's in there except for the one part about putting a label that exempts the city from liability statement on her. That's the only difference than what she's been doing so far. And state law protects food pantries from liability as long as the person takes care of it, acts responsibly, and does not purposely put things in there to harm other people. So she's been following the state law. It's the people that's been coming by trying to make it look bad that are disobeying the state law. But we don't have a camera out there to catch the people doing it. So I would suggest, and I'm willing to make a motion on it, that the pantry be left empty until the contract can be reviewed by the parties and either turned down and then the pantry removed completely, or the contracts get signed and then it can be restocked.
I Vice Mayor,
Yes, sir?
if I could, I just want to reference and read a line to you that came from the insurance company, so you can see that the agreement Scott drafted is much more watered down than what the insurance company is asking. They're saying in this case, they recommend a hold harmless agreement in favor of the city and proof of insurance on the individual and the organization providing the food pantry. In addition, these would not be there would not be coverage for the individual or the organization sponsoring the pantry. So their request is even more restrictive than what we initially proposed through Scott involving the insurance aspect. So the insurance company has already kind of put us on notice that they're expecting things to be seen in there to minimize the city's liability.
That I know of the state law does not require insurance. I mean, the insurance company may want them to have insurance, but the state law does not require that the food pantries have insurance as long as they abide by the state law.
That's why I was pointing out, we didn't require
That's like
that
the
in
Good
the
Samaritan
agreement that
law.
Scott, yeah, and Scott did not require that in his agreement, so we were a watered down agreement.
And just so everybody knows, if there's a question, why did Jim contact our insurance? I asked him to, because I mainly wanted to make sure that, as I mentioned it before the league, I want to make sure that if a claim is made, that the city's insurance would cover the city. And they said, yes, we have insurance, so if there is a claim made, we have coverage that covers the city. It won't cover Nancy, obviously, because she's not an insured. And then, obviously, they communicate about it, they say, well, you really should go get all these other things, too, to protect the city. That was in my first agreement like 3 years ago. It was a multi-page agreement, and insurance, whole harmless, all this other stuff. The commission didn't want it. That's fine. When we were here last time, I said it's a simple agreement, no insurance requirements, y'all were fine with that. I believe the motion said that there would have to be a disclaimer on there, and that's why I added it. Y'all discussed that last meeting, so that was added during the discussion, even though I don't think that's part of what she was doing currently. But so I added that because that was part of the commission's discussion when we talked about it last time. But Jim didn't go contact the insurance company. I asked him to do it. He didn't initiate that. I said, I just want to make sure the city has insurance in the event there's a claim. Because this is not going to prevent the city from getting sued. That's not the purpose of this agreement. We're going to get sued. I mean, just count on it. But it's here's a document that protects us, to try to outline who's responsible for what, to try to protect the city when we get sued. We can't stop somebody from suing us. And the bottom line is, if somebody thinks they have a claim because of what happened in the pantry, because they were poisoned or got sick or whatever, food poisoning, they're going to look to the deep pocket. That's us, the city. That's who they're going to look to first. We can't stop it, can't prevent it, that's just the way of life. We just need to try to protect the city so we have a defense to that claim if, God forbid, that ever happens.
That's where the hold harmless agreement thing on the contract. Having that posted there.
It's
kind
actually
of removes
explained.
the city as a disclaimer that removes us from
the whole
being liable for anything that she does there, as long as she abides by the state laws.
The disclaimer on there is to put the public on notice to say, this is not the city's food pantry. So when you're there, you know it's not the city. The hold harmless would be an agreement between the city and Nancy that if a claim is made, she will be responsible for any damages and all costs incurred by the city. That's what the hold harmless does. Well, if she has breached any one of these things that she's supposed to do, we have a claim back. We have a contractual obligation. If she signs this, we have a contractual obligation with Nancy to do these things. If she doesn't do those things, we have a breach of contract action back against her. So the hold harmless sounds good, but when you're in contract with a person, it doesn't really add a whole lot to the equation because she already has a contractual obligation to do these things.
Yeah,
now, the insurance would be helpful because our insurance company wants it because I think they asked that that be the primary insurance, which means if the claim's made, the claim would go to the insurance that Nancy had to buy first before it hit the city's insurance. But we're not requiring insurance.
Mayor, I have a
And I know And I know that anybody can sue anybody for anything because there was a case where a burglar broke into a house and upon exiting the house with the items he stole, he fell and broke his leg and sued the homeowner and won in a court.
Really?
Yes. So.
He actually got stuck in the garage too, I think, for a couple of days. I would like to.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm finding some confusion in what we're looking at on liability, based on, I guess, which party we're talking about. If I remember correctly, I don't think it was the last meeting, maybe it was. We had a young gentleman come up who was going to be taping the tennis courts for pickleballs, and then I guess a contract was presented to him that he would have to purchase liability insurance, and so therefore he said, no, forget that, no one go there. And so then the city turned around and said, well, that's okay. You go ahead and do the pickleball courts and we'll remove you having to pay for liability insurance. But he still refused it. He was still concerned about the liability being put on him. So where do we draw the line with people who are coming into the city, putting up their time, their money, the good for the people, going out buying food, filling the pantries so those who may be hungry, because I know the mayor himself, last meeting, voted that the homeless could sleep in city parks because his hearts are on property, because his heart's.
I didn't say that they could sleep there, I just was not in favor of that bill. It's like you say no to a bill, it doesn't mean it's supported.
Okay.
I just said, no, I'm not voting against it.
Then I apologize, I misunderstood.
I think addressing your question, Commissioner, there's a difference between tape on a court or painting lines on a court for pickleball versus consumable items that are put into a box that can be tampered with. So there is a distinct difference between a food court and tape on a line creating a pickleball.
Well, certainly there is, but someone could be out there on that pickleball court that was a tennis court that we now turned into a pickleball court, get hurt. Who are they going to sue?
Well, that individual was asked, just like the people wanting to put up batting cages for $1 million insurance. We didn't ask Ms. Nancy to get $1 million worth of insurance. So she wasn't held at the same level.
There's also different things that we're talking about in insurance. If somebody, if a volunteer comes here to provide services, we have them sign releases and all this other stuff. We may not require insurance. If they're coming here to do work, then, for instance, when we talked about, Rick Basso was talking about putting up a pavilion course, and I said during the meeting, he's going to have to go through all the process of a contract and insurance, because we need to make sure when people come in and do work on our facilities, like with what Rick Basso was proposing, that they have the same insurance and we have the same protection for their employees getting hurt, liability on workers, damage to adjoining property. We got to make sure we're protected. Just because someone's doing it for free, we have to make sure we're protected, and they still have to follow all the codes. I'm not familiar with the pickleball situation, but painting and putting tape down, the likelihood of them hurting, damaging our property, adjoining property, not as great as what Rick Basso was proposing to do with the construction equipment and everything going out there. But if somebody comes up and works on our pickleball court, we need to make sure that, if somebody's voluntarily doing something, maybe we will go waive a permit fee, but they got to make sure whatever they do, it has to be in compliance with the code. Because that's where we'll have an issue. In your example, somebody comes out to use the pickleball court later and gets hurt. If we allow someone to voluntarily come in here and do work on our pickleball court that creates a dangerous situation, then we're going to be liable. So we got, the most important thing there is to make sure that the work that's being performed is safe and consistent with whatever the rules and regulations are for that type of work. Different scenario, as Jim pointed out, when you're talking about the Lansing situation, that's a continuing issue where somebody could take something out at any day, before Nancy's able to go and look at it and inspect everything, somebody could make a claim. So that's an ongoing liability issue.
So the other Scott was the commission voted for that individual to work with Ricky, correct, Rick?
That's right.
So they would have been working with staff to ensure that pickleball court met all codes and restrictions.
Well, can I ask then, how far do we go? I've looked at our volunteer forums, and I've talked to other cities and other commissioners and city managers regarding volunteers. We're losing our volunteers, obviously, but how far do we go with volunteers? Do we do background checks on any volunteers that come in and do anything for the city? Because if we don't, we're definitely placing our city at risk. So at some point, we've got to either go high or we're going to go low.
I think we're a little bit off in the leads here. I think what we really need to maybe get back to is the contract, and maybe save this for a workshop if you're agreeable to that. We could discuss a little more in depth. It seems like it's maybe a little bit more in depth than we had originally thought.
Also, if I may bring up, when the year after the food pantry was installed, it was submitted to the Florida League of Cities as a community service project award. It got beat out by Gainesville, who did a fruit tree thing on cities right-of-ways, installing fruit trees for anybody in the public who could get them for nothing, just pick the fruit off the trees. Now, Gainesville was willing to accept the liability of somebody taking fruit off of a tree and eating it without knowing if anything's been done to it to tamper with. So the food pantry would be similar, except the contract would be a thing that's covered by state law that would protect the operator of it from harm, similar to a Good Samaritan law. You can still get sued, but the judge will look at it as long as it's following state law. The suit will usually get dropped, unless the attorney is so well spoken that they're able to say, well, that calls a person ability to continue with his work. Like in the burglary case, the burglar was unable to continue making his livelihood because he broke his leg exiting the building, and the homeowner was found liable for his inability to work. So there's always a chance that you're going to get sued no matter what. But I think that I agree it needs to be better addressed, and I would recommend that until then, that no food be put in there for public to use until such time as we get this reviewed, so that we remove, during that time, the chance of liability of us being sued for improper food being in there.
I'm probably the only person here who has ran a food pantry that fed 1,000 people a month, 300 families a month, and it was called the New Hope Food Pantry. The interesting thing about that food pantry is at the same time that the city came before the county for the ECHO grant, it was the same grant that I wrote for food pantry, tracking, and a Friday night special. So I've had some experience with food pantries. Now, the question that I guess I'm sort of stuck with is there a definition, Scott, of I'm looking at one here. It says the food pantry is an independent community site that distributes food and other products directly to those facing shortage. food pantries are supplied with food by partnering with local food banks. When I was running my food pantry, we were partnering with Second Harvest, which we were purchasing food with funds that was donated to be able to buy the food. So I'm just wondering that, is there a distinction between a box sitting in the front of the city, putting a label on it as pantry? Is there any clarification that we, since we're getting into the weeds, is there a definition?
I guess, I'll go back to what I said earlier. This isn't something the city came up with. It wasn't like the commission at the time said, this would be a good idea, Scott, go research all there is to know about doing one of these things. I don't know anything about all this stuff.
Okay.
She came here and she volunteered, she said, I'll take care of everything. I haven't looked into it. I just know as an attorney that if I was representing somebody who took Motrin that's expired out of a box on city property and my client got sick or died, I'm suing the city. I can assure you I would sue the city. Maybe Nancy too, but I'm coming after the city because you're the deep pocket, so I'm just trying to protect you. Maybe that immunity would work to us, maybe it wouldn't work. Sometimes immunity just goes to the people, doesn't go to the property owner, just goes to the operator. I don't know.
Okay.
But I'm trying not to spend more time than has already been spent on something that should not have required this much time.
Yeah.
I mean, it really should not require this level of discussion, to be honest with you.
That I know of, the state law does not distinguish between a standalone food pantry and one that's operated like outside the gate, or one that's operated like Second Harvest. They don't distinguish between them.
That's a good idea. You just mentioned outside the gates. I just speak to the pastor today. The new pastor is named Sue Holland, and they're also talking about she's a new pastor. She's been there since the 18th. So they're talking about bringing back the behind the gates or whatever it's called.
Outside the gates.
Outside the gates. Sorry about that. I have two cards here. I have Kurt. Which Kurt? Sniffen. Oh, Sniffen. Kurt. Yeah.
Can I just add one thing? I just want.
He's got the floor. Sniffen.
All I have to say is right now you guys are in a pretty tough situation making this decision. You're going to be damned if you do and damned if you don't. And that's the way it is. Nancy, I've actually, we put food in there ourselves, because it is something that's needed for the community. I have a suggestion. Table this. Don't vote on it tonight, just table it. And see, and then maybe Nancy can reach out to a nonprofit organization that can partner with her as far as the liability part goes on it, to help protect her as well. Ivy Hahn's a nonprofit organization. They claim they want to be a big part of this community. That could be an option, that they could partner with her as far as on the liability part. That is one of my suggestions. The other thing is this, and Scott, I guess this is going to be a question for you. Is this any different from when Cottage Foods was removed from the park because of the liability issue that could happen if somebody ate something from there? Because remember, Cottage Foods got removed.
I don't think Cottage Food was removed. It was.
But now you're required to put an ingredient label, and technically you don't have to. You don't have to with Cottage Foods, because Cottage Foods you can sell out of your house.
As long as it has the label of the owner of the kitchen that it came from, so that if somebody wants to take a look at their kitchen.
Well, then somebody needs to inform who runs it, says that it has to have an ingredient label.
She does.
Okay, because we were told you have to have an ingredient label.
Yes, they do.
Wait, what'd she say?
Yes, they do.
No, see, she said you have to have an ingredient label. So there's no difference. Hold on, this is my time. My time. Okay. So is it any different if there's no? It's basically like if I made a cake I have to put all the ingredients on it. Okay? Legally, I can sell that cake out of my house and not put an ingredient label on it. It's considered cottage food. All you have to say is, it's a chocolate cake. That's it. So is it, as a cottage food, you do. So my question is this any different than that as far as the liability issue goes? So that's in lies, you know, you guys are in a tough position.
Thank you for that.
You know, I hate to be up there right now. I mean, I know which way I would vote, but, you know.
All right.
So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. I have an Alec Cook sign here.
The one thing I would tell you, I just kind of Googled this Good Samaritan. This is what I've just read, the Good Samaritan law only protects people who give food in good faith, apparently wholesome food, and food grocery products to a nonprofit organization for ultimate distribution to needy people. So if you go buy groceries and you take it to a food pantry, you're not liable. It protects you for giving it to a nonprofit who's going to distribute. It says it does not cover direct donations to needy individuals or families.
That's a third party.
And so it's the person who brings it in.
The law that covers food pantries, though, is similar to the Good Samaritan law, and it's wording that it protects the people operating the food pantry from the same type of liability.
Okay, there's a food pantry law? This is Good Samaritan.
There's a food pantry.
Mr. Cook?
Alan Cook, 792 Oak Tree Lane. You know, this is a damn shame. Let me tell you something, real shame. This lady is trying to help things and it's
This way, Cookie.
Sorry about that, boss man. But anyhow, what annoys me out of it and all, and I have no problem with the food pantry, I think it's a wonderful thing. She's done a hell of a thing for 3 years. Now, the big question is, and I have to ask Nancy Weary this question, okay? She came up here and said that food pantries, but she has people that are against her and against the food pantry. Am I right or wrong, Nancy?
Right.
Okay, now, my question to you, Nancy, is, do you think that this can be solved with these people? Or, the thing is, I go along with Roger this way right now. If there's a question on it right now, if you get this thing taken care of, then let's just, if it's right with you, let's close it down for right now. Don't put anything in it.
Cookie. You have to address that.
Oh, you're still there?
Okay, we have somebody behind you, so as soon as you.
All right, you see my thing. My thing is right now, if there's a big problem, it's a shame that this is happening. But I will go along with Roger and that later. If, right this minute, if we can turn around and empty it, keep locked and stuff until this is settled, or what we can do with it. Okay? And then, like I say, maybe she can sign the contract or change the contract. God, I appreciate all you've done on this thing to try to make it work. All I'm just trying to say is for right now.
Thank you, Cook. Ms. Benny?
I just want to say that we already have, we already
Pull it down to you. Pull it down. There you go.
We already have a food pantry in the city, and we handle 50 to 60 families. And I don't know why you have to have one on a street corner.
Thank you.
What hours are you open?
Yeah.
She didn't answer.
What hours are you open?
The food pantry was open 7 days of the week, right?
Today's a Monday.
Mondays.
And the other food pantry takes care of.
And it's open in the, on Mondays from 8 to 10:30 and 5 to 7 at night.
And the food pantry takes care, the one that's outside takes care of all the other times that you're not open. It takes care of all the other times that you're not open.
Mayor.
But one can, I don't think that's popular, can't we put it at the Legion or something?
Yes,
Mayor, I know we're talking about it's complicated. It's not complicated. I'm not sure what we're having a workshop over. It is very, very simple. If the person running the food pantry will sign an agreement that says, I hold the city harmless, I'm responsible for the food pantry, end of discussion. The food pantry's there, they run it, and they take care of it. I'm not sure what a workshop or whatever is going to cover unless the commission is going to say they want it to be a town food pantry, and we're going to run it, and I don't want that responsibility.
I think I said workshop, it was about volunteers, not about the pantry.
Okay,
I agree with you, this
yeah.
should be very cut and dry.
Yeah, it's simple. It's either agreement or no agreement. No agreement, then it needs to go.
So we have a motion, are we ready to bring it back to that, or was there more discussion?
Parrish was asking to speak.
Okay.
This is Alan, so just for 1 minute before.
was there a motion and a second?
There
No,
was
second.
just a motion.
What was the motion? Again, I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't really make the motion, I said I would make a motion then, but say.
Yeah, okay.
But I will make that motion now.
Can Mr. Parrish speak? He wanted to do one last one.
Just as balance if I.
Yeah, you had about 2 minutes. You had a minute, actually.
Yeah, I took one minute. Thank you, Mark Perry, Show 139 West Park Street. So the broader point is, I don't think it's about liability. It's about exposing the city to unnecessary litigation that would have to be defended. It would cost money to defend it. So that there must be a compelling and good overall reason that it must be at that spot versus at a not-for-profit, at a church, or at a private residence. So that's, I don't know why we're kicking the can down the road again, when someone should just make a motion to just have it relocated, have staff take it out intact and the owner pick it up.
Very good.
Can I speak?
Oh, yes.
We have a disclaimer, we've had a disclaimer since day one that releases everyone from any liability. That's what we were told we were required to do, and that's what we did. It's been there for several reasons. When it was first voted there was the location and the cameras. And I don't have access to any of that. That is staff or police, and I leave that on them. So that's why that location was chosen. It's a great location. The way it's set up, you can't tell if people are coming and sharing food or receiving food. So it gives the anonymous aspect for privacy. So I'll leave the rest up to you.
Okay. Commission.
I'll state my motion then. I make a motion that the food pantry remain empty until a contract is approved.
Second.
You quit your second?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Didn't hear you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion to leave the food pantry empty until such time
Contracts approved.
is that an open time period, or is it your motion?
Well, before our next meeting,
Before the next meeting?
2 weeks, our next meeting's in 2 weeks.
Okay, so we're going to kick the can down the road another 2 weeks.
Can I clarify that?
Yes.
So if we don't have a contract in 2 weeks, do we remove the pantry?
That's what would happen, yeah.
Okay.
And that's an agreed contract, not a one-sided contract, right? Okay. Motion has been made. Second. Zone 1,
Yes.
Zone 2,
Yes.
Zone 4,
Why are you skipping her? Okay, yes.
Zone 3,
No.
okay? And I'll say no as well. I'll be on your side. I'm sure I'm saying. So motion is then to have a contract within 2 weeks or the pantry goes. And the vote is 3-2.
Was that the, how it was
We should
written?
end that right about now and just move on to the next thing. Is that okay?
Is that, would you repeat the motion? Because
The motion was
like
that
add stuff.
the motion, I'll repeat it. The motion is that the food pantry will remain locked until empty. Okay, not locked, empty. It would, but you'd have to make some
Yeah,
signs so people don't put
No,
something.
it'll have to be
So
locked.
the food pantry will remain empty until such time or before a contract, an agreeable contract, a two-party agreement contract has been signed with the terms and conditions, of course, that both sides would agree to.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. That does not happen within 2 weeks, then the food pantry will be removed. Is there any stipulation as to how the food pantry should be removed by the city or the individual that put the food pantry there?
The same way the administrator was handling it before, and allow.
And we would give we'd give the owner 5 days to remove it. If not, we could remove it and then they can pick it up on public works.
Okay, all right, so it's been so moved. Motion has been moved and 3-2. I think that ends that discussion at that point.
Who was the other no? I'm sorry.
It was me.
Okay, thank you.
I said no. I had to vote for my sister over here.
And I just have one last comment. I hope that we can memorialize what's been happening for the last several years. That was the goal all along, was to memorialize what was already happening. So that would be my goal.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we have got past 8. We're down to city administrator reports. I'm sorry, a break, 2-minute break. 3 minutes if
Thank you.
before the day's out tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine, whatever.
Let me know if you need me to change anything, and I'll change it.
Okay, all right.
And I wanted to tell you about this one thing. I just keep thinking no good deed goes unpunished.
You know what, they're not my judge, he is.
That's right. I feel for you. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
City Administrator, it's all yours.
Yes, sir. The next item on in your packets, I think my microphone's going, is our agreement with McDermott Davis, our auditors. They supplied an agreement for the next fiscal year using the perks that work, not only coming in and auditing staff and pulling records or whatever, but also work with Zach. They did their audit last year. I think they've done their audit for previous years. And actually, I would think they do probably a significant number of audits in Central Florida, because as I told you before, I dealt with them in the city of Mascot. Zach, I want to catch, if you can, with me, I think the dollar amount for next year's audit. The audit letter, it would not exceed $23,000 for the audit of the financial statements, and then an additional $4,000 if there's any audits of federal or state single audits, which usually require in reference to CDBG funds or other governmental funds. So our recommendation would be to go ahead and approve that audit for McDermott Davis, so that once this fiscal year closes, they can go ahead and get off and implement it onto our 23-24 audit. And I think the goal in here was to have it back to us by spring, February.
Thank you. Any discussion? You need a motion on this, or is this, of course, discussion?
You need a motion.
Motion?
Yeah, it's a contract, so we got to.
Thank you.
Any comments?
Any comments from the audience? We're talking about a auditor that we're going to be, McDermott Davis. Comments from the audience? Commission? Motion?
Make a motion that we accept the engagement letter from McDermott Davis.
Second.
Motion moved to second. All in favor? Aye. So moved. No opposed? So moved. Second reading. We got the future land use amendment.
Mayor, what I'll do, the system, I'm going to read this ordinance 2024-07, and I'll also read ordinance 2024-08, which is rezoning for the same piece of property. So both ordinances will be read. We'll give one presentation, And then you should vote on them separately, starting with 2024-07, the land use ordinance, comp plan amendment, and then go into 2024-08 after that, okay? But I'll read them both, and you'll have one presentation after both. Ordinance number 2024-07 by title only for second and final reading. An ordinance of the City of Lake Allen, Florida, amending the Lake Allen Comprehensive Plan, future land use map 2035, providing for a change of future land use designation on approximately 5.01 acres of land located on East Kicklighter Road, approximately 660 feet northwest of the intersection of East Kicklighter Road and South Pravat Avenue, from public lands and institutions, PL, to single-family residential, R1, providing for severability and conflicts, and providing for an effective date. And then, the next one. Ordinance number 2024-08, an ordinance of the City of Lake Allen, Florida, rezoning approximately 5.01 acres of land located on East Kicklighter Avenue, approximately 660 feet northwest of the intersection of East Kicklighter Road and South Pravat Avenue, from public lands to institutions, PL, from public lands and institutions, PLI, to single-family residential, SFR1, providing for severability and conflicts, and providing for an effective date. And I think the effective date on the rezoning ordinance 2024-08 needs to read that it becomes effective when ordinance 2024-07 becomes effective. 07 become effective, because our zoning cannot become effective until our land use is effective, and I think our land use does not become effective. It has a longer effective date. You see that we have to submit it in 31 days after adoption, so our rezoning ordinance won't become effective until the land use ordinance becomes effective.
So we have to change that on here?
We'll change it. Yeah.
All right, so we have ordinance 2407, rezoning ordinance.
2007 is the land use comprehensive plan change, and then 08 is the rezoning. Comprehensive plan needs to be changed first, so that because we can only rezone consistent with our comprehensive plan. So we need to change our comprehensive plan to allow the rezoning.
And we do them separately.
You're going to have one presentation, both titles have been read, and then you make motions on each one separate.
Motions on separate.
And on 2408, Mayor, the planning and land development, the LDRC Commission recommended approval of ordinance 24-07 and 24-08. The ordinances were heard at the July 22nd, 2024 meeting, and after taking comment, the LDRC moved to recommend approval to send ordinances 2024-07 and 2024-08 to the City Commission. The background is the Central Fellowship Baptist Church is requesting an amendment to the future land use and zoning of the north 4.05 acres of church property located at 626 Kicklighter Road. The proposed future land use amendment would change the land use from PL to R1 and rezone the property from PL1 to SFR1. The change is necessary to permit the church to split the 5.01 acres from the church site to allow a future home site. The request is consistent with the existing and the future development pattern in this area. Issue. Amend the future land use designation and rezone the 5.01 acres of real property on East Kicklighter Road, generally located 660 feet north of the intersection of East Kicklighter Road, South Pravat Avenue, to allow the property to be split from the existing church site at 626 East Kicklighter Road and permit future home site. So the recommendation of the PLDRC, along with staff support through Heather, our planning director, who supports the PLDRC recommendation, is approval of the first reading. Actually, this would be the second reading Ordinance 202407, amending the comprehensive plan designation of the 5.01 acres of real property from PL to R1. And then the second portion of that would be approval of the second reading of the ordinance 2024-01, rezoning 5.01 acres of real property from PL1 to SFR1.
I make the motion, we accept ordinance 2024-07.
Second.
Motion moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Comments from the audience? I'm sorry.
I guess I got to. I was, yeah, I don't have to, but.
I didn't hear it. Ron Perry. I attended that meeting, and their intentions are to split that again. And they're not allowed to split it any further than 2 more. So they're going to be putting 2 homes. And I sat in other meetings with them, and they denied a person to split their property to put quarter-acre lots for homes. And that's in the one area that they're quarter-acre lot homes. So I'm just kind of, I don't like the idea of taking the PL and turning it, breaking it off and changing that. And they're going to come back to you and say, we want to divide that in 2 lots now. So I think we got to think about what our vision was when they made the plots or land use. And now we're just changing it because somebody wants to change it. Sells the property. Builds the homes.
I think SF1 allows 2 houses per 5 acres, so it'd be 1 house per 2.5 acres.
Yeah, so they want to split it so they can put 2 houses, not just 1.
Well, it already, the SF1 that we're going to allows 2 houses.
Right now, PL doesn't, which is, that's the original land use.
Yeah, PL was for the church.
And that's the original land use for that property. The church bought that property, not to buy it and sell it for a profit or whatever. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Mayor?
I think we did the same thing for, I forget the name of the church, the one at High and Main Street, or Euclid and Main Street. We allowed them to separate their parish off from the church property.
Yes.
He was, I think he
Pub-
asked
pub-
that question.
Public land,
Mhm.
non-taxable, so this is actually creating some taxable lots out of their property.
But I believe that it's still zoned for them being able to put 2 on there, correct? So it's still going to be the
It's
same, it's
consistent.
just taxable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mayor, representing the board for the PLC is, plus that, in the fact of this, one reason why we discussed this and decided on it, the lot will be family. It will be his son that'll be there next door, so they'll have a future for the church and so forth like that. It's not like they're selling the property out. And he has another son. Maybe he talks to him and get on the other piece of property. But that's why we just decided to go with it. Plus that, it takes out of that, so we get some tax money out of it.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second, and then vote.
Yeah, Roger made a motion, Heather seconded, to approve the 2-4.
And we had a comment?
I'm second, you got a comment?
All in
Commission
favor?
comment?
Aye. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Is that comment?
That was
Yep.
You said it, no?
No, I said.
Oh, yeah, okay. So unanimous.
I make a motion, we approve ordinance 24-08 rezoning.
Second.
Motion moved, motion second. Comments? No comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Second reading of the sleeping in public property. 24-09.
Ordinance number 2024-09, had only for second and final reading. An ordinance of the City of Lake Elm, Florida, amending section 38.12.00, camping and sleeping to comply with Florida statute section 125.0231 to prohibit sleeping and camping on public property, providing for legislative findings, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for effective date.
Thank you very much.
Make a motion, we accept ordinance 2024-09 as presented.
Second. Any comments from the audience? Comments from the commission? Previously, on the first voting of this, I voted no. And the reason for that is because of my feelings that we have over 40,000 veterans that are homeless, and this would in some way affect them as well. I actually had a chance to bring that up when we were up in down in Hollywood at a symposium about this one very same thing. And the way that it was put before us is that it was a ruling that it did not have. I won't even get it. I didn't write it down. It was a ruling that had been sent down from the governor, and it actually created more of a problem, that it was not addressing the homelessness, but it was just making sure that it was criminalizing it if you were out sleeping. So that was just my vote to no. With that, now we vote zone 1.
Yes.
Zone 2?
Yes.
Zone 3? Zone 4?
Yes.
And I vote no. Good. Ordinance 2410. 2024-10.
Ordinance 2024-10, by title only for second and final reading. An ordinance of the City of Lake County, Florida, amending section 9.09.17, alternative methods of collection to create F, to provide for the collection of assessments as a condition of issuance of a certificate of occupancy under certain terms and conditions, providing for legislative findings, providing for conflict, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for an effective date.
I make a motion, we accept ordinance 24-10.
Second.
Second.
Comments from the audience? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. No opposed? So moved. Resident communications savvy system.
Yes, Mayor and Commission, since I've been here, various members have talked to me about looking into options to where the city had an ability to communicate more directly with our citizens, since we don't have social media. And a couple of pages that we have in Lake Helen, the Chronicles and others, while at times may be beneficial, but at other times they are full of misinformation and unfactual information relating to the city. After researching several options, I came across this company called Citizen Savvy. It is an app-based application where our local citizens can download the app on their phone, and then they'll have a specific section strictly for Lake Helen. People can sign up via their cell phone, their landline, their text number, or their email. So it provides the city multiple options for resident engagement and community synergy. Unlike other programs we had in the past for Code Red, this is not geared at just emergency information. This is the kind of thing where, in this particular program, let's say Rick's got a water break in a certain part of town, we can use Google to actually highlight the area that's affected, and then can have this program send messages just to the people in that area that you're on water, oil,
Boil water?
Boil water, thank you. I feel like I've been boiled, but the boil water notice. And then we also can send out messages, you know, when that's lifted. We've got the ability to highlight city events, workshops, and meetings in some way to engage. I looked into a program that is with Granicus, which is part of our webpage, and it was almost like a $10,000 initial startup and then implementation of their program. Citizen Savvy comes down to a base rate of $1,639 a year. And they have two options that I would agree that we would take. It's called plugins and targeted notifications. That target is where we can highlight specific areas of town and just target a notification. And the company then integrates with our website. They participate with us in a marketing campaign to get out flyers, newspaper articles, through social media, through our website, our utility bill. You know, that gets out information to the citizens that tells them how to download the app, how to set up their account. The community does 2 cities in Florida now, and they do many others throughout. So when a Lake Helen resident is signing up, they specifically sign and click on the Lake Helen one. So therefore, they're not getting bombarded with any other cities or any other entities. Sign up is simple and easy, and they will assist with us in the marketing of that. And I provided the information in there, you know, about the company, what they do. Again, it can be used for emergency information, but it also can be used for a lot of those things that we do throughout the year to advertise our events, highlight things in the park, the Christmas events, the races, commission meetings, workshops, and those types of aspects. And so right now, we don't have social media. We rely on our webpage, and again, we have to rely on, at least here in Lake Helen, Facebook. And we all know, just because you see it posted doesn't mean it's true. And so at least it gives the city an opportunity to at least be able to get facts out on certain issues. And so Kid Commission is open. They're not bought into this system. I can continue to look for, you know, for others, but this seemed to be, in this day and age, when most people are operating by smartphones and whatever, it seemed to be the direction to go. But it also is still available for those of us or those who in town have landlines and don't have smartphones and still prefer to receive that phone call or an email or something of that nature. And based on some of the other programs that are out there, it seems to be very, very cost effective. So if we went into this, we found out in a year it wasn't doing what we needed. It's a little investment, but it's a good opportunity to try a mechanism where we're almost doing a two-way communication with our residents.
How long will it take for them to ramp up to a point where we can have some dialogue or exchange?
Well, they usually tell me it takes a couple of months because as part of it is education. You know, they have an advertising budget that's allocated with this sign up. And so they will help us develop flyers that would be at City Hall. We do a mailing on water bills, but maybe not this next one if we're still using the postcards. The following bill, this could be an insert. We could do our own separate mailing. We could have it in these meetings here. We could even use the social media sites that residents are using now to highlight this, directing people to where that's at. So if it were to go forward and I get with them, you know, they would lay out the marketing plan and I can bring you back, get a little more updates in terms of that. Volusia County has something similar and some of the others are doing that. Some of them are storm related and what have you. So it seems to be a lot of organizations are going to app-based just because of the fact that the smartphone seems to be the biggest way that we get connected. And a person can actually log them into the system and then they can say how they want to be communicated to, by phone call, by email, by text. And then a resident, if they decide they don't want to get the messages, they can log back right in and have their account closed, from that aspect. So I've looked at several, going through a couple of others that I'm familiar with. But because of who we use for our webpage, we'd be limited to their site. And to be very honest, I didn't think at the cost that was involved, and it offered any greater advantage. And this is the kind of thing that staff in office can either do it from desktop, or we can even do it from phones. And it also then would integrate with the city calendar, so we can put in every single event, from Halloween to Christmas to Easter and July 4th, so that we're not using two calendars. Kind of their calendar would kind of tie into our webpage, and then we would keep that updated. So I know in talking with a lot of you, just 5 of you, in terms of that, there was some discussion about finding ways of how we could better communicate with our employees. And sometimes just doing an ad in the newspaper or posting on our website doesn't necessarily reach the citizens. And this would allow us to do that, but it would also work with the citizens to opt into the system.
This is for information going from us to them?
Yes.
Does it allow for, like, if they're driving down the road and they hit a pothole, does it allow them to call back or notify us in reverse direction about the pothole?
Let me check that. I think it's one way right now. I mean, just in the sense of those going out, but let me check that, Roger.
Because I've heard of some that were two-way, but they'd be more on the price of a grand assistance.
Yeah. There are those that people can be somewhere and take a picture of the pothole and can send it in and what have you. But I think this particular one is one-way communication, so we don't get into debates in terms of that basis. But I'll get that clarified. But I think that's not in this particular program.
Should we broadcast in the time of, say, a storm or an emergency?
Yeah.
And we just broadcast a wide area, or is it just the people who are signed up?
Well, it would be the people who were signed up. So the real key of it in the first several months, we've got a small population and kind of a little bit easier to communicate, is whether you come to the police department, whether you come to City Hall, you get a permit, you pick up your utility bill, come into these meetings, we have flyers and stuff, so it would be a constant, aspect. I mean, we could get with the schools, in terms of, parents and whatever. So they gave me a variety of ways of how they reach out to the community in terms of that process. But it seemed to be one that two cities in Yankeetown, and I think another one is using it. I've got them as a case study, in the back in there.
New Freedom Bureau?
Yeah, and small communities, but they're ones that I think the same thing. They don't have a PIO, they don't have a communications office, and people are trying to find a way to better connect. And our people with gray hair, like you, me, and Roger, and the mayor, and I'm not saying Charlie raised her hand. But Heather's from that generation that probably better identifies with the fact that this communication tool is probably more